it resolved that the Tobago House of Assembly leads the way in phasing out the use of polystyrene foam products on the island and promote the use of more sustainable and ecologically friendly alternatives. And be it further resolved that this House support a process for discouraging the production, importation, and use of polystyrene foam products. It is all around us, all the time, on our streets, the drains, the beaches, in the water. Our fishes are digesting it or attempting to do so. The reality is, Madam Presiding Officer, is that because of the composition of the polystyrene foam, it breaks up into smaller and smaller pieces all the time and is easily blown away in the wind. At times, we may even inhale some of the components of polystyrene foam. Of course, the base of which is styrene or synthetic styrene. We have to be mindful, Madam Presiding Officer, that these smaller or the broken down, so to speak, polystyrene foam can get into our water columns. And as they get into our water columns, they get into our water spaces, they can be ingested by marine organisms, and therefore they pose a tremendous threat to our marine life. It means, therefore, our fish population can be seriously endangered by the continuous use and irresponsible disposal of polystyrene foam. In terms of economic impacts, Madam Presiding Officer, the chemical contamination risk to human health, even though some people may say they are unclear, can lead to a drop in the demand for fish, as was seen in Trinidad, because it should be known that polystyrene and styrene attract mercury. And when they attract mercury in the water, and the fish mistake the polystyrene granules for eggs or whatever that they feed on, they will start consuming. It means that there's a greater likelihood that the very fish that we boast about, the very fish that we eat, the very fish that even our colleagues or some of my compatriots in Barbados may say belongs to them, can be contaminated with mercury. The manufacturing process for polystyrene products is the 5th largest creator of hazardous waste. It pollutes the air and creates large amounts of liquid and solid waste. As I indicated earlier, it's designed for one-time use and does not biodegrade. It's not biodegradable for up to 500 years. It means, Madam Presiding Officer, that these styrenes that make up the polystyrene foam and other chemicals can leach into our soil and our water. It means that we are exposed to the dangers of ingesting styrene.
Have you really taken the time to define the problem properly in the Tobago context? Madam Presiding Officer, since there were no supporting documents that came with the motion, I am forced to ask, how have we really defined this problem? For example, I know that there are at least one, maybe two waste characterization studies done at the Studley Park landfill, and I am wondering if any member has information about what percentage of the waste that is disposed at the landfill is actually polystyrene foam. That would give us a sense of the volumes that we are talking about. As a comparison, Madam Presiding Officer, in Trinidad in 2010, There was a waste characterization study done at the 4 major landfills there, and they reported that the category of plastics, which includes polystyrenes, ranges from about 16% to about 26% of the waste at those landfills. Now, granted, that included all plastics, polystyrenes, high and low density polyethylenes, polypropylenes, and a host of other plastics. Madam Presiding Officer, I sincerely hope that as we continue this evening's proceedings, there's actually a lot more information would be given about the quantity of polystyrenes we are talking about within the Tobago setting. Because I said before, we really need to define the problem so that we can understand the solutions.
From a tourism standpoint, the impact of polystyrene is varied. The literature also speaks to the presence of polystyrene contributing to marine litter on beaches. It reduces tourism and recreation activities and affects the attractiveness, aesthetics, and appeal of the destination. Madam Presiding Officer, this has a negative impact on the competitiveness of our tourism island. Let us take, for example, Madam Presiding Officer, the impact on marine life. There has been examples of floating islands of plastics commonly found in the Pacific Ocean that traps garbage, including styrofoam, and kills the marine life. Imagine, Madam Presiding Officer, what this could do to the ecosystem around our coral reef. And just a note, Madam Presiding Officer, coral reefs are not dead ecosystems. In fact, they are teeming with life and are known to support more species and has greater biodiversity than any other marine environment or rainforest. So even though these islands of plastic are not here, Madam Presiding Officer, the very idea of their appearance here is not inconceivable. Just think back, Madam Presiding Officer, to 1 year ago when Tobago was inundated by sargasso weed, which also affected many countries far and wide. Madam Presiding Officer, the effects can also be felt at the inner waterways. Our rivers and waterfalls can be clogged, leading to severe flooding and land erosion. So we must ensure, Madam Presiding Officer, that our waterfalls, our rivers, where our visitors and locals alike go on a regular basis, are not destroyed by flooding and erosion. Another critical factor, Madam President, is that the division is currently pursuing Blue Flag certification for Kings Bay in Dallaford, Batu Bay, and Bacalet Bay. And to date, Madam Presiding Officer, only Las Cuevas Beach in Trinidad has attained this status. This rating will indicate to the global community that we are serious about being environmentally friendly on this beach.
This process should have started with concerted research and consultation.
True.
The process of researching and consultation would have given us scientific data to work with regards to the Tobago space. So we don't find ourselves, as my extremely good friend, Councillor Stuart Phillips, quoting statistics from the United States and not being able to say specifically how styrofoam affects us in the local space. This process should have also included, even before we got to this place, us sourcing affordable and accessible alternatives and finding a way to getting that onto the market. Not necessarily the THA must import it and sell it, but engaging private businesses. I wish, Madam Presiding Officer, that we would have looked more closely at the alternatives, because to the woman that sells the sauce downtown, she is not listening to this debate because she necessarily wants to see styrofoam banned. she's listening to this debate because she wants to hear what will she use in the place of her styrofoam cups. My colleague, Councillor Faith, indicated that, yes, some parts of the world have begun to construct edible containers. She suggested cassava and using the cassava company. Well, that might be fantastic, considering that the cassava company generally produces a whopping 10 pounds perhaps per month of cassava. And that's being sarcastic, of course. And so, despite that being a viable option, a potentially viable option, it is not an option that is available immediately. And so, if we had begun to look for alternatives that are suitable to the Tobago and by extension the Trinidad and Tobago space, then we would have determined what are the options or the alternatives that are immediately accessible and, remember, also affordable to the Tobago public.
As indicated earlier, research has shown that polystyrene takes around 500 years to biodegrade to leave the planet Earth, Madam Presiding Officer. And let me give you a clear example. I am a teacher, and I'm going to be as vivid as I can. If I purchase a box of food, discard of my box, it goes to the landfill or the dump, it will disappear totally from mankind in the year 2517. Madam Presiding Officer, let us multiply those boxes. Let us multiply those one-time usable styrofoam utensils by the amount of festivals we have, the amount of activities, whether buying or selling. Let us multiply that. And all of these activities, styrofoam is ever present in one form or the other. Then, Madam Presiding Officer and members of this House, let us factor in, don't forget, 500 years to biodegrade. Let us factor in the days, the months, and the years that lie ahead, 2517. We continue, as we consider everything else, we continue to consider the length of time, as I said, it takes to decompose. And to compound this dilemma, if it is not properly collected and taken to the dump, it will end up somewhere, as we indicated, where it should not be. Madam Presiding Officer, members of this House, as an assembly charged with the responsibility of leading this island, we have taken the bull by the horn. This ain't no talk shop. We mean business. We have taken the bull by the horn because we recognize that we need to preserve this environment for our future generations. This, I can assure you, is only the beginning.
It has a lower atmospheric emission than many of its counterparts. It also contributes less to waterborne waste than bleach paper products. And when compared to other alternatives, the life cycle impacts of polystyrene products that are properly disposed or recycled are positive and should be recognized. I say the word properly dispose. Our problem in Tobago is one of disposal. Polystyrene can be disposed properly without any risk whatsoever to the environment. So why are they not doing it? Why are they not doing it? It's my concern. Class war. Class war. The bourgeois versus the proletariat. Those in the West versus those in the East. Class war. Class war. Furtherance of the agenda of their master. Those with champagne, those with more money, must aspire to champagne taste. I've said it to you a while ago. If one wants to dispose polystyrene foam or styrofoam, all one has to do is to ensure there's a special type, a specific type of incinerator, one that reaches a particular degree of heat. And when it goes inside there, the only emission will come out is carbon dioxide and smoke. Well, smoke, carbon dioxide, and oxygen, or water, water. That's the only thing will come out of it. Carbon dioxide and water. That's all. I don't know what is so harmful about that. If it's burned in the backyard where it doesn't attain the appropriate heat, what will happen? You will have carbon monoxide that is dangerous. So we're not saying that. But what is wrong with buying this specific incinerator? What is wrong with that? Is that so costly? As a matter of fact, I was doing some research in the United States because I'm my own researcher. They have failed to give me any researcher. That's the kind of that's the content of the men on that side, the character. They have failed to give me any researcher, but when I read, I remember. So I made a call in the US, and I discovered that you can lease a recycling machine for $300 US per month. And as a matter of fact, you can even sell densified when you compress all the air out of the polystyrene, the foam, and you now have it come down to raw, hardcore material. 1 ton of that for $350 US. I'm glad you are listening and taking note, Mr. Finance Secretary. Because there's money in the business of styrofoam. You're all talking about styrofoam as if you should just throw it away. Then good for nothing. Ban it and try to frighten people.
In the research I have done, I noted several things. Apart from the leaching of the styrene into food, I want to point to some other longer-term matters which must be of concern to us. When there's long-term exposure to small quantities of polystyrene, that can cause fatigue, nervousness, difficulty sleeping. So these are some neurotoxic effects that you have. You will also find some hematological effects. So you have low platelet counts and hemoglobin counts as well. The values are low. Let's look at cancers. We've noted that long-term exposure creates some carcinogenic effects. And that's important for us as an island to note. And so if we have a situation like this, that the one we are pursuing, where the motion is seeking to discourage the use of material in which the same chemicals can affect our health, as an assembly, that must engage your attention. Some of the other acute health effects include, and the matter of the breakage and the pellets and all of those, and the dust about which the minority leader spoke. He did not speak about the irritation of the skin, the eyes, the upper respiratory tract, and the gastrointestinal effects that will arise. Also, Madam Presiding Officer, if there's chronic exposure, this will affect the central nervous system, and so persons will display symptoms of headache, depression, and some fatigue, about which I just spoke. But you may also have some minor effects, Madam Presiding Officer, in terms of your kidney function. And so to the extent that polystyrene results in these health effects, and those health effects will impact the lives of our population, we must be concerned with that.
Let it be known that in over 100 countries, including the US, Europe, Canada, they have already banned many styrofoam and polystyrene products. We are not new to this. The research is there. Dr. Carrington, in her wisdom, would have shared a lot of research, a lot of credible research, and we know that the research is there to support this motion.
Whereas waste management is critical to our drive to build the Tobago brand of clean, green, safe, and serene. And whereas the preservation of our environment for future generations is a major concern of the Tobago House of Assembly. And whereas polystyrene foam, which is generically known as styrofoam, causes almost irreparable damage to the environment. Be it resolved that the Tobago House of Assembly leads the way in phasing out of the use of polystyrene foam products on the island and promote the use of more sustainable and ecologically friendly alternatives. And be it further resolved that this House support a process for discouraging the production, importation, and use of polystyrene foam products. All in favor? Aye. All against?
Madam Presiding Officer, I beg to ask for a division of votes. Call for division of votes, sir.
We will have a division of votes at this time. 13 for, 3 against. The motion is carried.